Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Welcome to the Performance Matters podcast from GP Strategies, your talent transformation partner. In each episode, we'll interview industry experts and explore best practices and innovative insights to help your organization improve performance. I'm your host, Michael Thiel. Today, we're talking about learning in the flow of work and the idea of moving this from concept to reality. This is a real holy grail topic, so settle in because this is going to be a great conversation. To tackle this topic, I'm honored to be joined by two pillars of excellence from the GP Learning Services Group. Please welcome Ella Richardson, Global Head of Consulting and Experience Design, and Andrew Joly, Head of Strategy, both from GP Learning Services. Welcome, Andrew. Welcome, Ella. How are you doing?
Hi, Michael. Very well, thank you. Great to be back.
Oh, hey there.
So before we talk about learning in the flow of work, I think we need to put on our marketing hats and come up with, a catchy name for this, because learning in the flow of work, well, it's a mouthful. I mean, what do you two think here? Can you come up with something, at least for today's show?
I mean, Michael, it has been lit for years and years. People have been talking about it.
Okay, so today we're talking LitFo. That sounds easier than learning in the flow of work. Let's talk about the importance of LitFo. Andrew, I'm going to toss this hot potato over you. Why are we talking about this now?
Why are we talking about this? I think, the pressure to learn for businesses to drive performance change, growth, has never been as important and strong as it is now. Organizations need to evolve fast, and the pressure of kind of time out for learning and the cost of that is significant. And the realization also that stepping out of what you do in your daily work to do learning isn't necessarily the right way of performing better. So something around how to bring the world of our work every day and the world of our learning closer until it kind of merges into one is a significant kind of opportunity for everybody.
Absolutely.
Ironically, I think true learning in the flow of work used to look like observing others and performing in the moment with feedback in person. It also used to be known as, I guess we've called it just in time, or JIT as well, if we want another acronym. But so many roles and technologies or industries are now technology driven that I think the potential for technology to deliver on learning genuinely in the flow of work has never been greater. And I think, an example of that is we're seeing the rise of the AI super coach providing that just in time feedback, for example. I actually recently saw some research that young people entering the workforce are more likely to be receptive to performance feedback from AI, like Copilot, than they are from a manager. So, I think the reason we're talking about this now is with these developments in technology, the potential to scale impact in the flow of work has never been greater, in my opinion.
When you're thinking about this at the meta level, what's it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, the concept's been around for a really long time. Like Andrew said, it's integrating learning into the daily task and the workflow, acquiring knowledge and skills while you're doing tasks. And I guess, that really means that it's a continuous part of, and it's like inherently part of the workday rather than separate to it. But I guess the base level principles for me are that it's on the job, having what you need on demand at the point of need. But more than that, I feel like it's more about the end goal being performance rather than learning being the destination. It's performance support rather than micro learning, because I think that's what we sometimes see happen is it's, let's just chunk it up and deliver it during work hours. Like that doesn't make it learning in the flow of work.
Yeah, I agree, Ella. My view, Michael, is that it's one of these core principles for great learning in business, a bit like personalization. And it's been there for decades, actually, as a kind of aspiration or an ambition that learning and work become so close together that they become incredibly kind of efficient and integrated in the way businesses work. And it's been picked up over those years in different ways. As Ella says, some organizations have described learning in the flow of work as kind of micro learning, others very, very much platform based. If you work in a call center and you have a system, an electronic performance support system, as they used to be called, EPSS. So that was another version of learning in the flow of work. But I think for us, it's sort of anything that brings the two closer in different working environments is where we're headed.
I think it's also about motivation because, I'm driven to access information, to learn by my contextual need, tailored to what I'm trying to do. It's about being motivated to achieve an outcome rather than, doing it because I get a badge for it. So I think at a deeper level, again, it's also tied closely to a culture that values learning and that drives its people to value the process of learning and continuous learning.
You two are keying on something that is really exciting here in my mind, and that is shifting learning to performance. It's really about I have an immediate need, and can you help me get better? Can you help me maybe get excited about going to my workplace and having a great day there? And that leads me to a question for you, Andrew, is, how close can this LitFo get to the real job itself in terms of like a seamless integration? What's your thoughts on that?
I think we learn through interactions with each other and we work with technology. These are the two ways we learn, and these are the two ways we work. We work with people, we work with technology, and technology is changing. And I'm sure Ella will have something to add to this, but I think that everything is bringing us into a kind of beautiful moment of convergence, which really will allow not just knowledge in the flow of work, but beyond that, a really, really close alignment of learning and work.
Yeah. Look, people learn through experience. So the closer you can get to the real work, the better, in my view. We often talk about like the contextual relevance. That's really important in being able to apply what you learn and what you can learn from that being as effective as possible. But I think we also need to be careful that we design for real learning and not just for knowledge supply for the work, because this is kind of the counter argument to that, or to balance it out, because we really need to develop people's skills and drive genuine behavior change, not just provide them with information. I think getting that balance right is quite challenging in design, but ultimately we want to give people the opportunity to actively participate in a real world activity and then ensure that they can reflect and and feedback so that they can make like genuine intentional adjustments and improve. So it's thinking about it from that perspective for me.
Yeah, Andrew, you and Ella had touched on earlier the emerging role of AI in LitFow. I mean, I'd love some perspective from you on what you're seeing happening.
Yeah. I mean, the ability of platforms that we now have that are AI driven to drive an absolute kind of focused personalization of need and response built on huge swathes of data that would mean that systems can now sit beside us, as Ella mentioned, the super coach, as if they were the super coach sitting right beside us, giving us what we need, not just when we need it, but perhaps before we need it.
It sounds like science fiction, but that's exciting to think that your performance, your past performance, could truly help anticipate a need for you, a coaching need, a development need before you're even aware of it. I mean, that's holy grail type stuff. It's very exciting, but it also could be a little daunting, I would say, for organizations. So for those that are serious about LitFo here, Andrew, where do we start? I mean, you're the head of strategy, so let me flip this over to you first.
Well, as with everything, and as Ella rightly said, this for us is really about performance. And I think you start with the performance, what the real performance needs are. That's where we always start.
Okay.
And I mentioned the super coach, the super you. In my mind, simply put, if you imagine the person sitting beside you all the time, and you're constantly thinking, how could they help at any moment in my working life, that will begin to bring out the kind of components of a strategy around learning in the flow of work, because then we can begin to create the systems or the interactions that provide exactly the same as having the super you right beside you at any one time in your working day. And then we can build out the workflows and the technologies and the approaches to deliver that in a kind of seamless way that enables learners, people, to get that information without having them to step out mentally from whatever it was they were doing, or rather bring that to a minimal component of the interaction.
That's really exciting to hear that. I mean, Ella, I know that you're working on these type of projects on a regular basis. Is there any real world examples that you could share with us?
A great example for me is an organization we've been working with for a number of years. And actually, we've produced a lot of product knowledge, support, and learning over many years. We've taken the opportunity to rethink how we do that. And with the rate of their product development, it's deeply impractical and very costly for people to learn and ultimately have to retain information on hundreds of products. So our consultants and technology team got together and looked at thinking about how we can leverage emerging technologies to tackle the challenge in a different way. And they have developed a pilot product to enable them to put the customer need first and any similar products that the customer might be interested in, and then using a large language model at the back end and learning content AIQ product, it will supply them with a market comparison, including the benefits of the products and talking points. And so I think it's a really nice example of actually where this isn't even about really like getting technical. It's not really even learning in the flow of work. It is simply performance in the flow of work, whereby we're providing them exactly what they need in order to meet the customer where they are and provide them with all the information they need by effectively designing out learning. It's more like a sat nav.
Practically speaking, though, Ella, let's just get this down to brass tacks because I think for a lot of people, they can feel like this is boiling the ocean type thing. What are some practical strategies to implement something that's very exciting, like you're sharing?
Like we mentioned earlier, Andrew was saying about electronic performance support systems. This was kind of the focus in the past, but I think there's an opportunity to move to more sophisticated technology solutions where we're looking at the user experience design. So here's another example. Like for one organization that I worked with, we were driving the behaviors on their sales platform, and we were looking at how we could design performance support into the actual interface of the tool that sales teams were using, as well as looking at what needed to change in the environment around that. So for example, in terms of managerial support, time to learn and support to actually learn on the job. I think we're also seeing a significant rise in the potential for chatbots too. And I think these are the kinds of things that have had a really bad rap for not being as sophisticated as we'd like them to be in the past. But there's now huge potential where we are able to train large language models on data sets and have an interface to interrogate that. So like the example I just described. But practically, this really starts with an analysis of the behaviors, what's currently happening and what are people doing in their roles, how are they performing, what do we want to drive towards, what kind of behaviors are we looking for, and a really thorough analysis and understanding of the barriers, because then we can look at evaluating the role of technology in the solution and ultimately provide them what they need and the opportunity to rethink how we're delivering and what the role of learning is in that performance.
Yeah, I would add that we do find ourselves talking about platforms and embedded tools and so on and so on. But if we're really going to grasp the opportunities of learning in the flow of work, I think it goes beyond that, because real learning in the flow of work tracks you across systems. It follows you. It's kind of ubiquitous. Different systems may be joined up. And so, it may be a bit more blended, a bit more mobile. It may be offering you nudges when the intelligence system thinks there's something you could know, but it's also there to give you stuff when you ask for it. It's systems working together. And I know it's easy to say that, but I think that's where we're trying to get to. And the idea of, to come back to personalization, and we talked about JIT, just in time learning. And I think if all of that is just for me, then, you get closer and closer to everything being joined up and everything being entirely super relevant for the learner all the time.
Yeah, the direction I see us moving in is really that kind of context dependent AI. That's where there's real value here. If we can use AI to preempt or even, dare I say it, predict what you need as you need it. So Andrew and I were talking about, if you're having a performance review as a manager and a team member, both people might appreciate some quick tips for how to approach that to make it the most effective session that it can be.
Absolutely.
It'd be great to have an automatic prompt scheduled for each of them to prepare for it, and maybe some reflection points to, bring back on how it went. Again, it's like the sat nav prompt plus the follow-up with situational nudges. And the reality is we're really close to that already. The other area where I can see this going is, thinking about like geolocation tagging. So again, we already have this, but if you're approaching a hazardous area, you can be warned of what to look for, whether that's through a device or if you're wearing glasses. I think all of this is eminently achievable, and I think we're going to see it become more widespread. It's not far out now, is it?
It's really exciting. Like you said, this is about performance and real-time contextual. I mean, this is really, really great stuff here. Let's talk some practical realities, though. So, what are some common barriers and challenges organizations are facing? Ella, what's your take on that?
I think the main challenge or the biggest barrier that certainly that I see is that organizations don't really know what it is or don't have a shared definition for what we mean by learning in the flow of work. And even if they do, like there might be some assumptions, they think that it's really hard or they think that it's really difficult to measure. And I think if it's feeling labor intensive and less obvious about how you measure, that's where we see a lot of L&D teams more incentivized, or it's the path of least resistance to revert to more formal learning and traditional methods. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. I think the challenge is rethinking what learning really is in an organization, and that idea of performance and learning in the traditional sense being different things. And it's realigning how we measure the learning, how we consider it, how we deliver it. But the other thing I would say, and this is just picking up on something Ella said right at the beginning, is that if we are providing everything everybody needs in the moment, we also need to reinforce that and create the learning that isn't lit flow, because there are some things that require best learnt outside of work. Actually, that reflection, that moment of space, take on
Right.
board new concepts and learn new ways of doing things is done best not perhaps right in the middle of your daily work. And so I think it's recognizing the value of these different modes of learning and need and playing to their sort of the optimal mix, really.
That's a great way to look at it. You have to have some foundational understanding to fully appreciate and leverage the LitFo or PitFo, right? They have to work together there. I mean, what are some additional perspectives you have on that?
As Andrew was speaking, I was thinking about the fact that ideally we see less of the learning stuff. It's like in the example we spoke about earlier, you're actually designing out learning and it's just about outcomes. But I still get flabbergasted that how many organizations are still measured and evaluated on learner time, which, let's be honest, is just really the wrong metric in the context of what we're talking about. And I think the other challenge from my perspective is that we've also spoken about the depth of technological solutions and using technology in smart ways. In the past, this speaks to like how we engage with learning and development and I guess the tools at our disposal. And that's why in the past there's been a focus on what tool or platform might deliver this for us, when in reality we need to start with analyzing the problem and then look at the systems and the technical environment that we're operating in and how we can leverage the technology to define the right kind of approach to tackle the problem. And often that might be looking at things like the data flow of information. How can we integrate technologies? How can we enable those different technologies to support each other or to speak to each other, rather than having a separate platform or some other kind of intervention that we're actually driving people to?
Yeah, it's very exciting. I hear one undercurrent in everything that we've talked about today, and that is that a lot of this just starts with a conversation. So stripping away the tools, the platforms, and just a good conversation with an Andrew or an Ella about what is your performance need, where are the gaps, and then from there you start to layer in recommendations and solutions. That's very, very exciting to me. And I'm thankful that we have professionals like you both out there doing this kind of great work. So as we're wrapping up here, though, I'd like one closing thought from each of you about today's topic. Andrew, I'm going to let you have first pass.
Closing thought. I mean, we're in a really exciting place for this. After decades in this industry talking about learning in the flow of work as a concept, and only a few sectors, by virtue of the type of work people were doing, were getting anywhere near that. Now, I think we've got the possibility and the tools and the technologies to develop something that really looks like learning in the flow of work for everybody. And it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, we've never been in a better spot with the kind of technological advancements that we've seen and how quickly things are improving. I think that's the thing. It's getting better and better all the time. But I'd say consider the real work first. We need to drive the behaviors and then we can work backwards. Forget learning for a hot minute, but design for that performance in the flow of work. Don't go for the pitfalls. Design for the performance first and the rest will come.
Sage advice and perspectives from both of you. Ella and Andrew, on behalf of our global listening audience, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insight. And listeners, you can discover more about Litfo, Pitfo, Jiddle, you name it, and the GP Learning Services Group at gpstrategies.com.
The Performance Matters podcast is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts or listen on our website at gpstrategies.com.